I'd like to call this meeting of council to order. It's Monday, December the 18th at 7 p.m. And we have joining us via Zoom, Councillor Betty Ann McKinnon, our Drainage Superintendent Andrew Neely, and Mike DeVos from Spreet & Associates. And it says Erin Besh, but she's actually in the gallery. So, and I'd like to welcome everybody who's in the gallery here tonight. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? Seeing none, you've had a chance to read the minutes from November the 20th. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, could I have a motion to approve the minutes from November the 20th? Moved by Councillor Nordoff, seconded by Councillor Brody. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, we're now going to move into the Court of Revision, and we need to call that to order at 7:02 p.m. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Kingma, seconded by Councillor Brody. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, the first item up is 5A, the Kelly Drain 2023. The Court of Revision is pursuant to the report prepared by Spreet Associates dated June 20th, which was considered and adopted at the consideration meeting held on November the 6th, 2023, and pursuant to bylaw 60 of 2023, which received 2 readings by council at its regular meeting on November the 6th. Section 54 of the Drainage Act provides that the decision of the Court of Revision can be appealed to the Drainage Tribunal within 21 days from the date of the Court of Revision. The final day of appeal is Monday, January the 8th, 2024. So we'll call this the Kelly Drain, we'll call it to order at 7:03. And I'll turn it over to Mike Barnier, clerk. Do you have any?
We did not receive any written appeals from any of the landowners.
So we have not adjourning. That's wrong. Okay. Okay. Is there anyone in the public that wishes to appeal the schedule of assessment? Okay, seeing none. We ask the court if they have any further questions regarding the schedule of assessment. Okay, seeing none. We need a motion to, sorry, where have you? Okay, we have a recommendation that the assessments contained in the report for the Kelly Drain 2023 as prepared by Spreet Associates dated June 20th, 2023 be confirmed as presented. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Kingma, seconded by Councillor McKinnon. All those in favor? And that's carried. So we have a recommendation that the Court of Revision for the Kelly Drain 2023 be adjourned at 7:04 p.m. Mover and a seconder, moved by Councillor Brody, seconded by Councillor Nordoff. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, continuing on with 5B, the Dortmund Mullaferry Drive Drain 2023. The Court of Revision is pursuant to the report prepared by Spreet & Associates dated September the 5th, 2023, which was considered and adopted by the consideration meeting held on November the 6th, 2023, and pursuant to bylaw 61 of 2023, which received 2 readings by council at its regular meeting on November the 6th, 2023. Section 54(1) of the Drainage Act provides that the decision of the Court of Revision can be appealed to the Drainage Tribunal within 21 days from the date of the Court of Revision. The final day to appeal is Monday, January the 8th, 2024. Okay, we'll now call to order the Dortmund's Mullaferry Drain at 7:05 p.m. We have a recommendation that council sits as the Court of Revision under Section 97 of the Drainage Act as amended to consider the Dortmund Mullaferry Drain 2023. Moved by Councillor Kingma, seconded by Councillor Nordoff. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. So to the clerk, are there any appeals from any landowners?
The township has not received any written appeal to the drain.
Okay, is there anyone in the gallery that wishes to raise any questions or appeal? Okay, is there anyone in the court that wishes to ask any questions or review? Okay, seeing none, we have a recommendation that the assessments contained in the report for the Dortmund Mullaferry Drain 2023 as prepared by Spreed Associates dated September the 5th, 2023 be confirmed as presented. Moved by Councillor Kingma, seconded by Councillor McKinnon. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, we have a recommendation that the Court of Revision for the Dortmund Mullaferry Drain 2023 be adjourned at 7:07 p.m. Moved by Councillor McKinnon, seconded by Councillor Kingma. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, here we go again. Number 6, the Beatty Drain 2023. There's a recommendation that the drainage consideration meeting to review the engineer's report for the Beatty Drain 2023 be opened at 7:07 p.m. Moved by Councillor McKinnon, seconded by Councillor Kingma. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, Mike DeVos from Spreets is up on the screen there. Mike, would you like to present?
Yes, thank you. Good evening.
Thank you.
The report before you was prepared in accordance with sections 78 of the Drainage Act and section 4 of the Drainage Act. The project was initiated to look into improving and possibly replacing a portion of the Beatty drain, and that would be the main drain, the closed section. It is 3 different ages. The portion of the drain that was being requested was a portion built in 1961 to 1973 for the lower part of the main. There was also going to need to be some work on the open channel as well, including a clean out and some improvement to depth. So there is a little bit of deepening of it. In addition to that, through the meetings, some landowners also petitioned to have new branches constructed. So there would be a branch B and C that was petitioned for, which would serve the south half of concession 12 in lot 7. They are relatively short branches extending from the main southerly. And then there was also 2 branches requested in the north part of lot 7 and 8, heading from the open channel, heading easterly across Mayfair Road and basically parallel to Calvert Drive, serving the north parts of those lots. So the proposal before you includes replacement of the existing drain with 8-inch to 30-inch diameter pipe, and then the construction of several new branches of smaller various size diameter pipes, and also some clean out and slight deepening of the open channel from Calvert Drive crossing upstream to the tile outlet. There are a number of catch basins being proposed along the route of the drain to capture surface water and get it into the drain as well. So I would stop and open up to questions.
Okay, are there any questions from the public? Irvin, do you mind just coming to the desk here on the microphone, just because it's hard for them to hear? I mean, we're having trouble enough hearing them, but just state your name for the record, if that's okay.
Yeah, my name is Irvin Bryant. I just had a question for Mike about what is the theoretical boring on Calvert Drive? There's nothing needs to be bored under Calvert Drive that I would understand.
There is, that's it? I can answer that?
Yes, go ahead, Mike.
Okay. Yes, there would be one area where a crossing of some of the water would want to go across Calvert Drive if Calvert Drive didn't exist. But because Calvert Drive exists, now the water is being turned and headed, taken directly westerly.
So is this to take like the surface water from the ditch on the one side to the other?
No, that's a theoretical cost. If you were to take a shorter route and take some of the area from your property due north across the road into the Milson drain. So the county is saving money by us heading west and staying on the south side of Calvert. If we had gone northerly, it would have been a shorter route and less costly for you, but more costly for the county. And for that reason, we do charge the county some cost towards this drain.
Okay.
So Mike, could you break that down to percentage? Like how much would be assessed to the county? Like, would it be half or if it's for their benefit?
Being the consideration meeting, I don't have the information handy, but I'm going to take a peek to see if I can get a quick answer approximate for you. It appears that we assessed a portion of it, not the whole thing. I would say more in the tune of half or maybe a little bit less than half of what it would have taken in reality to cross the road.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else in the gallery have any questions for Mike? Peter, come on up to the microphone, please. Just state your name.
Oh, we got lights. I remember. This is more or less not my question, maybe as much as Robert Robinson's. I was talking to him. He had some concerns that branch D, the township doesn't seem to have updated their records from 2017 when he put a new drain through there because he had to, the other one was completely toast. So it is now 14-inch tile all the way from the main drain up through to Victor's line fence. He was surprised that wasn't done. He also had concern because he had seen at the time that was put in, the original clearing when the bush was taken out was not in the proper spot. When he got the drain in, the township, yes, we'll get that done this summer, was supposed to take another 30 feet off one side. It's never happened, and he was concerned that the tile are gonna end up getting full of roots again, and he thought that should be incorporated into this work.
Okay, either Mike or Andrew, do you want to speak to that?
I can speak to a portion of it. I would say that this is likely, and you could maybe confirm this, but it's likely the portion on our drawing that was shown to be the original 1951 drawing, which we are
Yes.
now calling branch D. We did hold some meetings and there was no work requested from the attendees. We could have included it in this report had we known, but it sounds like the clearing of the trees is what's required, and that could be completed as maintenance. The existing report would indicate that there needs to be a clearing on each side of the trees. So that work could be done in the future or at the same time and be charged out as maintenance. There is a new maintenance schedule provided in the report. So the assessments could be covered off with that new schedule. So it's not too late to add it. It is maintenance. It's not an improvement. But we were unaware that tile had been replaced. But
Yeah,
it is,
well,
it's still part of the drain.
yeah, well, the township, he was thought it was a little odd that the township had put in a new drain and didn't have it in their records.
Yeah, Andrew, do you have anything to add?
Nothing specific. I think that Mike is correct in that it was done under maintenance.
Mhm.
And the issue with maintenance is that it doesn't have the same kind of records that are attached to it as a new engineer's report. But I would agree with Mike that if there needs to be any more clearing through the bush, that it could be done under maintenance and it could be done at the same time. It could be tendered out at the same time, and it would be using the schedule that was provided sometime in the earlier 2000s, I think, is when the last schedule we have on file that we could use. So it would be just maintenance at that point.
Yeah, Robert indicated it's pretty minor, like 2 or 3 hours with a high ho would have it done.
Right. Yeah.
And if you want, I have his drawings from when he did that drain.
That would be handy.
No, I guess.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I may be speaking out of turn, but perhaps this is a learning moment for process, where we're constantly at the office here trying to evolve and improve upon processes. So this is a perfect example of, in a situation like this, the takeaway should be that even any minor maintenance work should be run by somebody's desk here that knows what they're doing to incorporate any upgrades that would be valuable in a conversation like this. So I'll leave it at that. Anybody else in the gallery that wishes to speak? Victor, are you good or here? Okay, great. Okay, thank you. Okay, are there any questions from council? Okay, seeing none, we have a recommendation that the engineer's report dated October 16th, 2023 for drainage works on the Beatty Drain under Section 4 and 78 of the Drainage Act be considered and provisionally adopted as presented by the drainage engineer. And that the recommendation, oh no, here, we'll do that first. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Sorry. Moved by Councillor Nordoff, seconded by Councillor Brody. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thanks. We further have a recommendation of the drainage consideration meeting to review the engineer's report for the Beatty Drain specifically be closed at 7:18 p.m. Moved by Councillor Nordoff, seconded by Councillor McKinnon. All those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, we'll now, item 7 on the agenda is the Committee of Adjustments. We have a recommendation that council convene as the Committee of Adjustments at 7:19 p.m. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Kingma, seconded by Councillor Nordoff. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Yeah, I get to read some more. Okay, for the Committee of Adjustment, the public meeting, the purpose of the following public meeting and Committee of Adjustment are to give council, the Committee of Adjustment, and the general public an opportunity to hear all interested parties with respect to the applications being heard this evening. The public is advised that comments expressed and written material presented are a matter of public record available for full disclosure. In respect to the Committee of Adjustment applications, only the applicant or a public body can appeal a Committee of Adjustment's decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal. This must be filed within 20 days from the date of decision. In respect to the public meeting applications, if a person or public body does not speak to the application at the public meeting or make a written submission to the township, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the court council decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal and be added as a party to an appeal of the decision to the tribunal. If you wish to be notified of the decision in writing, please submit a written request to the clerk. Okay, the first item under the Committee of Adjustments is an application for a minor variance, A08-2023. The owner is Trevor Hounsell from 24809 Melbourne Road. And I'll turn the meeting over to our planner, Erin Bash.
Thank you, Chair. So the first application before the committee this evening is requesting to permit a livestock operation or livestock building rather, that is 218.3 square meters in size, whereas livestock buildings are restricted to a maximum of 100 square meters in the limited agricultural zone. The subject lands are approximately 2.7 hectares in size. There is a single detached dwelling on the property. The aerial photography that is used in our location map shows 2 additional accessory buildings, but those are no longer there. So it is the single detached home only. The applicant is proposing to build a stable for several horses for personal use. The only concern with this is that the limited agricultural zone has a maximum size for livestock buildings. And that is because this zone specifically has like a smaller lot area requirement. So typically, you'd have issues with MDS. They're trying to keep those types of structures small in size. So I did actually run through an MDS calculation for this property using the AgriSuite software on the OMAFRA website. The MDS2 setback buffer was extremely small and did not have any impact on any surrounding residential houses. So the application was also circulated per the requirements of the Planning Act. The drainage superintendent advised that the property has a tile municipal drain, the Cadman drain, that runs sort of across the property. The landowner did indicate that the drain report that we have on file is actually correct, that it runs where this building used to be, right underneath. But the structure is set back a sufficient distance from that drain. The St. Clair Region Conservation Authority also advised that portions of the subject property are regulated, while the structure is completely outside the regulated area, so they would not require a permit for the construction. So I assessed the variance as per the 4 tests in the Planning Act. I am satisfied that the 4 tests have been met. MDS is not a consideration. The property or the structure itself meets all of the setback requirements of the LA zone. There is additional room on the property for paddock and pasture, and can easily accommodate these just several horses. So my recommendation this evening is approval subject to 2 conditions. The first being that the proposed structure be located a minimum of 5 meters from the Cadman drain to the satisfaction of the drainage superintendent. And that the proposed structure meets the setback requirements of MDS2 to the satisfaction of the township. So both of those conditions are something that would be addressed at time of building permit as well. But I did want to include them just for additional safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Is there anyone in the gallery that wishes to speak in favor of the application? Is there anyone in the gallery that wishes to speak in opposition of the proposal? Okay, seeing none, I don't think I'll read through that again. I think Erin's read through it enough. The application for minor variance A082023 with the 2 conditions she listed. We have a recommendation to approve that. Moved by Councillor Brody, seconded by Councillor Nordoff. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, we have a recommendation that the Committee of Adjustment adjourn at 7:25 p.m. Mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor McKinnon, seconded by Councillor Nordoff. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, item 8 on our agenda is a recommendation that council convene into a public meeting at 7:25 p.m. Moved by Councillor Kingma, seconded by Councillor Nordoff. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Next item up is application for zoning bylaw amendment Z09-2023. The owner is Marianne Van Gorp from 2529 Napperton Drive. And I will turn that over to Erin again.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just going to share my screen again. So this first rezoning application is looking to satisfy a condition of consent respecting consent B06 2023, which was brought before the Committee of Adjustment, I believe in August, September 18th rather. So one of the conditions of a surplus farm dwellings consent is appropriate rezoning. So the applicant is proposing to rezone the residential lot to a site-specific surplus dwelling SD-7 zone, and to rezone the lands to be retained, being the farmland, to the agricultural only zone. The site-specific nature of the SD zone would also recognize the size of the existing shed. The SD zone does have a limit of 75 square meters for accessory structures. This structure is obviously in excess of that, but rather than require the removal, we just recognize it through a site-specific zone. And the applicant has indicated that that structure is for storage purposes only. The application was circulated as per the requirements of the Planning Act. I did not receive any concerns from agencies, interdepartments, or the public as well. So I am satisfied that these two zones are appropriate and will satisfy the conditions of the consent approval. So my recommendation is approval, and further that council proceed with the first and second reading of the implementing bylaw, with the third reading to be completed once a registered plan has been received. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Is there anyone in the gallery that would like to speak for this application? Is there anyone in the gallery that wishes to speak against this application? Are there any questions of council? Okay, seeing none, then we have a recommendation that application for zoning bylaw Z10-2023 be approved and given 3 readings. It says 2 here. It says 3 here, sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Further, that council proceed with the first and second readings of the implementing bylaw and the third reading to be completed once a registered plan has been received, right? Okay, a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Brody, seconded by Councillor Nordoff. All those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, next up is 8B, application for zoning bylaw amendment Z10-2023. The owner is Hyde Park Farm Supply, Inc. and William Frank. It's part of Lot 28, Concession 1 SCR, and I'll turn this over to Erin again.
Thank you again. So the purpose of this application is to rezone the subject lands from the general agricultural zone to a site-specific rural residential R-5 zone to recognize the residential nature of this property. The site-specific nature would also recognize the deficient lot area of the subject lands. So the subject lands themselves are just under an acre in size, has approximately 70 meters of frontage along Egremont and 52 meters along Hansford Road. The lands are currently vacant and in agricultural production. The subject lot has been an existing lot of record since at least 1906 when it contained a schoolhouse. The applicants previously owned the larger surrounding farmland as well, which is 4271 Egremont Drive. In 2007, the owners decommissioned the existing livestock structures so that the subject lands could be developed for residential purposes. So the structures have been issued change of use permits, identifying them as storage purpose only. The lands are within the general agricultural zone, which is usually a zone designated for, of course, our large 40-hectare minimum farm lots. They permit crop production, livestock operations, greenhouse uses, etc. This zone is likely not the most appropriate for this property, as it does have pretty significant setback requirements. It's assuming you have agricultural structures that would require significant distances for the front yard setback, rear yard and side yard as well. So in order for this property to really be developed for residential purpose, the applicant is requesting to rezone to a rural residential property or residential zone rather. The application was circulated as per the requirements of the Planning Act. I did not receive any concerns. The county engineer did not have any concerns. The drainage superintendent advised that this zone change would not affect drainage at this point. If there is building on this site in the future, there is a municipal drain that runs along Egremont that would likely be their drainage outlet. However, it'd be subject to the building code and possibly peer review. But that is not within the scope of our application this evening. So my analysis of the application, I am supportive of the change. I believe that of the particular size being less than an acre, it's not a viable farm parcel and likely should be developed for residential purposes. So this RR-5 zone is appropriate. Again, the site-specific nature is recognizing that it is 3,670 square meters, whereas a minimum of 4,000 square meters is required in the RR zone. But I am still of the opinion that it is an appropriate zone for this property. So I have drafted a bylaw for council's consideration this evening, and my recommendation is approval and further that council give the bylaw 3 readings as well. Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone in the gallery that wishes to speak for this application? Is there anyone in the gallery that wishes to speak against this application? Is there anyone on council that has any questions? Okay, seeing none, we have a recommendation that the application for zoning bylaw amendment Z10-2023 be approved and given 3 readings. The reason that the consistency with the provincial policy statement would be maintained, conformity with the Township of Adelaide Metcalfe official plan would be maintained, and the requirements of the Township of Adelaide Metcalfe zoning bylaw would be satisfied. Could I have a mover and a seconder?
I'll move that, Mayor Sue.
Moved by Councillor McKinnon, seconded by Councillor Kingma. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, we now need a motion to adjourn, that council adjourn the public meeting at 7:33 and reconvene into the regular session of council. Moved by Councillor Kingma, seconded by Councillor Brody. All those in favor? And that's carried. Yep. Okay, so next up, we want to welcome Arlene Morel, our school board trustee. And Arlene, if you want to just come up to the microphone here, we're happy to have you.
You obviously didn't get my email, not to try to get out here.
Are you driving a Jeep or a 4-wheel drive?
I grew up rural. I'm in a truck
You're
with
good,
4-wheel
eh?
drive.
Yeah. So just to give everyone a background why Arlene's here, I don't know that we've ever had a school board trustee come here, and I don't know if any other councils ever asked you to dance for your dinner, but it sort of came to mind when I was looking at the breakdown of where our taxes go, and for every 20 cents, we send those to the school board. So I thought it would be beneficial for you to come and tell us what's going on in the area, some of the growth that's happening. So I'm sure some of our counselors don't know we're receiving buses from Strathroy Caradoc out to Adelaide Metcalfe, that's my understanding, but I stand corrected if I'm wrong, of students because they have an overflow. So I just, if you can give it sort of a synopsis of how things are going at the school board and its existing trends or whatever you feel is relevant, we'd be happy to hear from you. So I'll turn the microphone over to you.
Perfect. So I just wanted to write that down so I don't forget that I talk about that point, students. So, well, I've already had dinner and I'm not a really great dancer, but I am But I am pleased. Thank you for inviting me this evening. And yes, I have been invited to other councils, and 2 municipalities within Middlesex County have what is referred to as a local school advisory committee, which is a committee of council in which it is trustees act as a resource. And we provide through that local school advisory committee, I'm not going to talk a lot about it tonight. We remain in regular contact with council members, the mayor, and their staff relative to happenings within their communities. So to begin, my disclaimer, I'm not representing the Thames Valley District School Board for the minutes. The opinions expressed are from my own personal perspective. I'm not representing Thames Valley District School Board, no officially expressing statements of the Thames Valley District School Board. I'm here solely in my capacity as your elected trustee in Middlesex County. So just a little bit about me. I'm serving my 9th year as your trustee. Previous to my election, I served public education in the role as a parent leader through home and school associations and school councils. Yes, Adelaide Metcalfe Adelaide McDonald Metcalfe was the former school, has a very active parent group, a home and school association. And as I was involved with home and school associations, I served provincially as the president of the Ontario Federation of Home and School Associations, along with other provincial appointments. I am a proud graduate of Caradoc North. I was raised on a farm in the former Caradoc Township. I have two grown children, a son and a daughter-in-law who live in Park Hill, 2 grandchildren in Park Hill. My son is a part owner of Ross Welding and Fabricating in Elsa Craig. I have a daughter who lives in Byron, and my husband and I live in Strathroy. He is from Kitchener and now loves living in Middlesex County. Along with my role as your trustee, I'm the region chair for the Ontario Public School Boards Association, and in that role, I oversee all of the school boards from Owen Sound to Windsor and as far west as Thames Valley. So I hope this provides just a little bit about my background as an introduction. As your mayor mentioned, there was a few items I was asked to speak about, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have to the best of my ability with the information that I have. To begin with, budget and funding. Education funding is technically titled Grants for Student Needs, although we often refer to it as education funding. School boards receive the majority of funding from the provincial government. This funding comes in 2 forms: provincial legislative grants and local taxation in the form of education property taxes, which you are far more familiar than I am. The provincial government sets the rate for education property tax. We have absolutely, as a school board, as trustees, we have absolutely no input into the education rate of property tax that is determined by the local government. Simply, the province provides additional funding to what it is that you collect up to the level set by the education funding formula. And we've just had our most recent our financial statements, or our consolidated year-end audited financial statements. And to help put it into context for you, the provincial legislative grants total to $899 million. Our overall board budget is just a little over $1 billion. The education property tax in that total of $1 billion is $173 million. So we receive considerably more provincial funding through the provincial legislative grants than is collected through the education property tax in all of Thames Valley. As you can guess, education funding is incredibly complex. Most of it comes to us as restricted grants. We receive our funding based on bums and seats, the number of students we have in our schools. I would, though, like to highlight one grant within that overall funding complement that is really important to our rural communities, and is a piece that I was very proud to be an advocate for back in 2017 when the provincial government initiated this grant. It's referred to the Rural and Northern Education Funding. The ministry invests provincially a little over $21 million through the Rural and Northern Education Funding Grant as an enhancement to the GSN, or education funding. This funding is dedicated for school boards to use only to improve education for students from rural communities based on a list provided by the Ministry of Education. And this part is really important. Generally speaking, the list of which the ministry lists the rural schools are communities in which at least half of the students are from rural communities, and the Ministry of Education has a formula that determines that I fully support. For example, a rural school where the school is the only school in that rural community would be one of the schools in which receives additional funding. The rural and northern education funding represents an average increase of about $55 per rural student, and this is based on the 2017-2018. I know it's 2023. The funding, as I said, is restricted for the use and the operation of rural schools, and every student in our rural school generates funding to this allocation. We receive a little over $729,000, and the funds are used to support our rural high schools, Glencoe, North Middlesex, West Elgin, and East Elgin, in staffing to ensure that we have, to the best of our budgeting allotments and alignments, additional courses, student offerings, programs in those schools. So not only is this additional funding allocation important, but in addition to this, what is important to rural schools is the schools that are identified through this rural and northern education funding. In the most current document related to school closures, schools that are identified have greater parameters and expectations when boards are considering potential consolidations. Let me be clear, the moratorium is still and it remains in place. For our rural schools that are mentioned in our rural and northern education funding list, we have the moratorium were to be listed, there would be there's additional parameters that school boards or hoops that we must jump through in order to consider a school consolidation. And this is so important to me, when I hear, and still when the Parliament was sitting last week or the week before, our members speaking about how there were 600 school closures in the province, most of them rural, that to them, this allocation or this assurance that there are additional parameters that must be considered for rural school closures remains important. I'd also like to highlight through the Rural Education Task Force in Thames Valley, there were 30 school closures in the county of Elgin, Oxford, and Middlesex County versus not 10 in the city of London. And so we really appreciate this policy that allows for particular parameters relative to any consideration to schools that are listed within this funding allocation. Budget 2024, I'll move on. Budget 2024, school boards are required to approve a balanced budget in June of each year. So our budget season is almost beginning. For us, generally, the budget process begins in February and March. Generally, the GSNs are announced in April, and we sort of budget perhaps in an interesting way. We receive the allocation from the government, and based on the allocation from the government, we then insert the areas in which it is that we need our funding for our schools to operate our schools. As I said, the overall funding is based on the number of students enrolled in our schools, and unlike previous years, Thames Valley is now considered a growth board, and so therefore, the more students we have, the greater amount of funding that we receive every year. Well, just in other pieces, our strategic plan is our governance work. And similarly, I understand you have a similar governance model that is directly tied to our work. Currently, the Board of Trustees is working with a consultant in the development of a new strategic plan. I co-chair the ad hoc committee overseeing this, one rural trustee and one city trustee co-chairing this work. The new strategic plan is scheduled for board approval in February of 2024. Now, related to the Adelaide McDonald boundaries, they have not changed for the school they've not changed for the school. In addition to this, this year through the school condition improvement funds, which again is another allocation line in our grants for student needs, Adelaide McDonald received major renovations in the oldest area of the school to upgrade and to modernize, including accessibility compliance. And then finally, I personally remain committed to rural schools that I serve. I deeply understand the very important role the school is to its community. As I do in every municipality within Middlesex County, I've made and continue to make a personal commitment to inform and communicate with the mayor and through the mayor to the council when there is a school matter that directly impacts your municipality. I hope that has provided a very high-level overview of the complexities of $1 billion school board, and I'm absolutely happy to answer any questions that you might have. And in speaking to busing overflow students from Caradoc North to
Sorry, not Caradoc North, the north part of Strathroy.
oh, the north part, sorry, my apologies, the north part of Strathroy. So all of our schools have catchment areas or boundaries. And so for there to be any busing of students that are outside of the boundary area would come to a board for a board decision. We would conduct an attendance area review and we would make adjustments to the attendance area. That has not happened for Adelaide Metcalfe. We are embarking on an attendance area review for Kilworth, Kamoka, Delaware area, but that has not happened in this area. So students that are being bused from the north end of Strathroy, because part of Adelaide McDonald's attendance area is in the north part of Strathroy. So the students that are bused here are students that are within the boundary for Adelaide Metcalfe. And I do watch very intently. Just the other night, there was a public meeting related to the settlement areas in Strathroy. So I do watch, as I do for all of my municipalities. I do watch the growth that is happening, especially in the areas where there are schools that are at capacity or over capacity, when they're bordered on schools that are at or under capacity. And certainly Adelaide McDonald is on my radar in terms of when there's growth that is happening on the north end of Strathroy, and or when North Meadows is at capacity, what decisions and what boundary adjustments can be made to ensure that all of our schools are viable and right-sized.
Okay, thank you. The reason I raised that issue was that I don't believe it's the same principal at Adelaide Metcalfe now. I think it's a new principal. And the former principal had told me that it was going to be absorbing the new development in the north end of Strathroy proper. So that's what's prompted that question. Okay, thank you, Arlene. That's a great overview. Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Brody.
Through Mayor Clark, just have a question on all the different boards, and because I swear there's 5 buses that go by my house every morning and there ain't 10 kids on a bus. Like, can't these boards put their heads together and share busing?
I'm not laughing at you. It is a question that we're asked on a regular basis. And it was the rationale for a number of years ago. The ministry initiated school bus consortiums where school boards are required to have joint agreements or joint consortiums that look at how we can find efficiencies in busings. So we do have a consortium here that serves this area. It serves the London Catholic School Board and it serves the Thames Valley Board. It does not serve the two French language boards. And we do, as best I understand, because of as best as I can possibly understand, in that the consortium is at arm's length to the Board of Trustees. It operates as its own entity. And that while funding about 55 million flows through our budget directly to the consortium to provide busing for our students, as trustees, we have no representation on the consortium's board. Nor do we have any input into their policies, nor do we have any input into their policies, nor do we have, has been my experience, in my opinion, a direct line related to advocacy. But certainly I hear the two sides of it. Buses are overfull and students who would like to have a seat on a bus are not eligible for a seat on a bus, and or your concern related to buses that are primarily empty. They're questions that we ask regularly in terms of reports that we receive from the consortium back to the committee, but it is it's certainly a piece that we hear on a fairly regular basis related to what are the true efficiencies? Are buses overcrowded, undercrowded? Are there ways in which it is that we can better utilize our buses? Second to that, the ministry has just finished an overall review of busing across the province. And so there will potentially changes coming from the ministry's review of the delivery of busing, which would be to the consortiums, not directly to us.
That's very well answered. Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? Betty Ann, are you good?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Sue. I'm good, and thank you to Arlene for a very informative narration of what she holds. I'm thinking dear, trying to keep these schools open, and I know that was a concern here in the Glencoe area several years ago, the possible closures of the two high schools, one in Park Hill and one in Glencoe. So I'm glad that new formula has come forward, or format has come forward.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you for that. And hence why we continue to use our funding allocation to ensure to the best of our ability that the additional staffing in our small rural secondary schools remains in place. It's a really important, it was very much from my perspective, being a trustee prior to this funding allocation and the additional policy pieces, this was a real game changer in many ways in terms of being able to differentiate our approaches relative to our small rural schools.
Okay, Councillor Brody, another question?
Yeah, through you, Sue. I guess this is to all my teachers' friends, or my friend teachers that I keep bugging all the time. Do they have to go on strike every single time the contracts due? Like every time?
I don't think Arlene's got a lot of control over that. But if you do, please weigh in.
Well, their teachers are about 2 years. I believe August 31st would have been the second year outside of their contract. And I expect that there will likely be good news in the area of teacher contracts within the next 4 weeks or so.
The parents listening will be happy to hear that. So, okay, Arlene, once again, I'd just like to thank you for taking time to come. I haven't looked outside since 4:30, so I'm not really sure what it's like out there. So we appreciate you going through the weather to get here. So thanks again. And if anybody has any questions down the road, I'm sure your door's always open and your line of communication's open as well. So
Absolutely. Reach
Yeah.
out to me at any time. And as I've committed to, if I hear anything that I know you need to be informed about, I will be in contact and we'll share any information that is relevant to your schools.
that's great. We really appreciate you coming out tonight. Thank you. Okay, the next item up on the agenda is upcoming conferences, seminars, and meetings. The next meeting of council is on January the 15th of 2024 at 7 p.m. And the next council meeting after that will be February the 5th, 2024 at 7 p.m. Recommended readings, CC number 1, Middlesex County Council highlights from November 21st, 2023. CC number 2, the Ausable Bayfield Conservation Authority Board of Directors minutes, November 16th. CC number 3, Blue Water Recycling Association Board of Director meeting highlights, November 30th, 2023. Our representative is Councillor Kingma. I don't know if there's anything outstanding, but is there anything you wanted to highlight from that?
Yeah, there's nothing particularly new to report. It's just that the association is really concerned about meeting our waste diversion targets, and they're trying to convince stakeholders to take a more fulsome look at collecting from commercial, industrial, and institutional enterprises.
Okay, thank you. Under action required, CC number 4, a resolution from the municipality of Grey Highlands in Ontario regarding the Ontario Energy Board leave to construct process. Councillor,
I would like to support that.
okay, is there anyone that would like to second that? Okay, moving on then, CC number 6, a resolution from the municipality of Tweed, the 1/3 funding grant programs. Counselor Kingma?
I'll try this again. I would like to support this resolution. I don't think the province is all keen on supporting 1/3 funding, but I think we need to put it out there and see what happens.
Yeah, and I think more and more with the cost of things, to be able to spread it around and everybody who's a stakeholder take a piece of it is a good approach. Okay, so would you move that, Counselor Kingma, then? Yes, so that's moved by Counselor Kingma, seconded by Counselor Nordoff. All those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, CC number 7, a resolution from Prince Edward County regarding the MECP expansion of permit by rule. CC number 8, a resolution from the town of Aylmer, amendments to the Residential Tenancy Act. CC number 9, a resolution from the town of Orangeville, Ontario Works Financial Assistant Rates. CC number 10, a resolution from the Township of Coleman regarding Conservation Officer reclassification. And CC number 11, a resolution from the Township of Clearwater regarding the cemetery transfer supports. Okay, then, can I have?
Mayor Sue,
Yes, go ahead, Betty Ann.
I would like to move that we support that.
The last one, the Township of Clearview
Yes,
cemeteries. Okay.
yes,
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Counselor Kingma. All those in favor? And that's carried. That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's really good.
So we got. So we're looking to. Just going through this, we're looking to file and receive CC 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Looking for them.
Could I have a mover and a seconder? Counselor Brody moves that. Counselor Nordoff seconds it. All those in favor? Thank you. That's carried. Okay, next up are the staff reports. The first one up under 11A is the Richard and Early Drain appointment of an engineer, and I'll turn this over to Andrew Neely, our drainage.
Thank you, Mayor
engineer.
Sue. Just a quick background, at the October 2nd council meeting, council accepted the request to reconstruct all or part of the Richardson Early Drain under Section 78 of the Drainage Act. Excuse me. In addition, council directed staff to procure a drainage engineer under the procurement policy. As a result, in accordance with this policy, the staff issued a request for quote on October 19th of this year. The RFQ was sent out to multiple engineer firms to obtain pricing. And you can see the results here. The RDOM and engineering submission was 40,500 and Spreet Associates was 41,950. M. Garrett's Consulting was non-submission. It is my recommendation that council accept the submission by RDOB and engineering in the amount of 40,500 to write a report for the reconstruction of the Richardson Early Drain in accordance with Section 78 of the Drainage Act. And I'm open for any questions.
Okay, are there any questions for Andrew from council? I'm seeing no nodding of heads, so I won't reread what Andrew just said. We have the recommendations before you. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Counselor Kingma, seconded by Counselor Nordoff, and all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, next up is 11B, the official plan review, this discussion papers, and I'll turn it over to Abby Heddle. Did I say that right?
You did. Thank you.
Oh, good.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay.
We're just gonna wait for Aaron to get the PowerPoint up.
Let's share screen, please. I joined again. I didn't.
Okay. Appreciate it.
All right. So I'm here to talk about the discussion papers that are on tonight's council agenda. You can go to the next slide. So here is the classic infographic that I think I've used at every presentation thus far throughout this process. So just to show where we're at, and then kind of a looser estimated timeline of what's to come. Next slide, thank you. So the purpose of the discussion papers. So essentially, these are based on the 4 key themes that form the basis for the proposed policy changes to the township's official plan. Each discussion paper provides a policy framework that starts with the provincial policy as well as any provincial guidelines, and then down to county as well as what exists locally in the township's current official plan. The intent of each discussion paper is to ensure that proposed policies are consistent with the direction in the PPS and that the proposed policies conform to the county official plan. So inputs into the discussion papers. So obviously the provincial policy statement. This also includes any legislative changes through the slew of housing bills that we've had over the last 2 years. The county official plan, which was approved finally in July of this year. So that's positive news for this process. Survey response data. So that was posted on the township's website from May to July of this year, as well as the feedback that we received at the council visioning session that was in June at the fire hall. All right, so in terms of the agricultural policy discussion paper, it identifies a number of topics of interest. Many of those are more of the provincial changes that have happened since the last time the township's official plan was reviewed. So that includes the on-farm diversified uses, agriculture-related uses, minimum distance separation. And then it also includes more of these policy changes that are a result of the new county official plan, which includes housing for farm labor, as well as manure, biosolids, and septage. So each report concludes with recommendations and next steps. So essentially, the next steps in terms of agricultural policies in the township's OP include providing policy direction for on-farm and agriculture-related uses, which will also include a review of the home occupation policies, a review of agricultural consent policies, including those for surplus farm dwellings, and then a review of MDS policies, as well as just a general review of definitions that exist in the township's OP now, just to bring those into conformity with those in the PPS and the county OP. So the housing discussion paper provides an overview of the municipal comprehensive review background report that I believe was endorsed by council sometime last year. And it goes over the recommendations of that report just to ensure that they're still relevant in light of all of the changes that we've experienced over the last 2 years. It provides an overview of existing hamlet areas in the township, provides an overview of this notion of the housing crisis that we're in and kind of what's happened in that regard provincially. So this whole task force that they have, it goes over that. It includes information about additional residential units, garden suites, and then recommendations and next steps. So essentially, the background report recommends implementing some of the recommendations from the comprehensive review background report. It also recommends including new housing policies that allow for alternative housing types and built form, additional residential units and garden suites, as well as a general overview of the definitions again, just to make sure that they are up to date. So the employment policies background paper provides an overview of existing vacant employment land within the township. It includes employment land forecasts and those calculations. It talks about consolidating employment lands and more strategic locations for employment lands in the township. It discusses the notion of identifying future employment lands beyond 2048. So the idea that we're able to identify but not designate those lands. And then it also talks about the conversion of employment lands to non-employment uses, which is now permitted by the PPS. So the recommendations and next steps in this report include identifying and protecting lands for potential future industrial development beyond the 25-year planning horizon, providing policies to allow for the conversion of employment lands to an alternative land use subject to criteria that is outlined in the PPS and the county OP. And then again, an overview of the definitions to ensure that they are up to date. And then lastly, the Natural Heritage Policy Background Report or discussion paper provides an overview of the natural heritage systems-based approach. It provides definitions of natural heritage features, and then it also includes some information about development assessment reports or EISs. So I would note that the current OP contains strong natural heritage protection policies, but it focuses on woodlands and wetlands individually, whereas the PPS now requires a more holistic view to natural heritage protection, which is this notion of the natural heritage systems-based approach. And this was supported by the Middlesex Natural Heritage System Study that was completed prior to the county OP review. So this paper includes several schedule change recommendations that will be brought before council in the form of a red line OP, as well as a pretty significant overhaul of the existing policies, but the crux of the policies in this regard don't really change. So next steps will be a redlined official plan, which will be posted on the township website and circulated to council for feedback. So these discussion papers, as well as the redlined OP, are also included for the public as part of the statutory public open house that will be required to have. So essentially that will allow the public to review the red line document and then come to council and ask questions of council or staff. And that's followed by a statutory public meeting where council would consider the potential adoption of the red line OP. And that is supposed to happen in April of 2024.
So Abby, if I can just jump in here for a minute. So after the public meeting, is there an opportunity for amendments or changes to be made if applicable? Okay.
Yep. So that would probably happen in between the open house and then the statutory public meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just for clarity.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah. So if
Sorry, I should have waited till the next. I'm always jumping ahead of the class, sorry. Yeah, okay, are there any questions after my question there, I guess, from council regarding the OP? Councillor Kingma?
Yes, thank you. Through the mayor, just an observation I made. I don't know if either of you two know what this is about, but I was listening in on the Strathroy public meeting. They were discussing settlement boundaries. And they mentioned in passing, I don't know if other attendees noticed this, but that some of Strathroy Caradoc lands are captured in the Adelaide Metcalfe official plan. Does anybody know anything about that?
Yeah, I heard you say that.
So my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, those lands were at one time part of Adelaide Metcalfe. And through some form of annexation, at some point in time, I'm not sure when that was, those lands were brought into Strathroy Caradoc. What didn't happen at that time is they didn't bring those lands directly into their official plan. They left it in Adelaide Metcalfe's official plan. So now that they've opened up their official plan review and comprehensive review, that's now the right time to do that easily at probably a low cost to them.
So it'd be more of a housekeeping matter.
It's more of a housekeeping.
Okay.
Yeah. Nail it.
Okay. Any other questions for Abby or Aaron? Okay. All right, seeing there's no more questions, so we have a recommendation that council receive the official plan review discussion papers as presented. Moved by Councillor Kingma, seconded by Councillor Brody. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is 11C, the operating budget to actual as of November 2023. We'll turn that over to our treasurer, Johnny Pereira.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. So we have in front of us the November 2023 budget actual report. Overall spending and revenue collection to date looks to be on pace with the approved budget. Commentary has been updated in the report with any department specific items. The recommendation is to receive the report as presented, but happy to answer any questions.
Okay, are there any questions or anybody need anything clarified on council? Okay, seeing none, then we have a recommendation that the operating budget to actual report for November 2023 be received for information. Councillor McKinnon moves that, seconded by Councillor Nordoff. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Safe travels, ladies.
Happy birthday.
Okay, yeah. Okay, next up is 11D, asset retirement obligation policy. And once again, we'll turn that over to our treasurer, Johnny Pereira.
Thank you, Mayor Clerk, through to council. So as a municipality, Adelaide Metcalfe is required to follow the accounting standards established by the Public Sector Accounting Board, better known as PSAB. So a new standard has been recently established called asset retirement obligations under section PS 3280, which all local governments must incorporate into their 2023 financial statements. So an asset retirement obligation arises when there is a legal obligation to retire a tangible capital asset. So retirement is defined as removing a capital asset from service and includes the sales transaction, asset abandonment, or asset disposal. So these costs may include a dismantling or remediation of a tangible capital assets. Of an asset. So existing laws, regulations, and contractual agreements within the township may require us to take specific actions to retire a certain tangible capital asset at the end of their useful lives. So staff are currently reviewing the assets that may carry a retirement obligation, and this will continue into Q1 of 2024. So this exercise of identifying, assessing, and estimating asset retirement obligations will be conducted across all departments. Throughout this process, staff will be actively engaging in discussions with our auditors to ensure a thorough and accurate assessment. So although asset retirement obligation is a non-cash transaction, it will highlight areas with a future liability. So after this assessment, a future recommendation may be brought forward to council to establish a possible reserve to address these future costs on asset retirement. So this would be a similar example to the landfill reserve. So once that is retired, there is funding required to dispose of that asset. So staff have developed the attached policy to establish steps to be followed regarding the recognition, measurement, and overall responsibilities. So the recommendation is to approve the report as presented, but happy to answer any questions.
Hey, thank you, Johnny. Is there anyone on council that has any questions or requires any clarity? Councillor Kingma?
Thank you, through the mayor. I'm glad to see this policy added to our manual. How thick is that thing now? Anyway, because it helps us to know what our cash flow obligations are going well into the future. So it's very logical. One quick question. I'm not sure if this sounds dumb, but would our playground equipment fall under this category?
No, great question. So the playground equipment, wouldn't necessarily fall under on this policy, as there wouldn't be, any, I guess, obligation to clean up that. It would fall under our asset management plan. So once, that playground equipment reaches the end of life, we would then, replace that. So funding the, life cycle management reserve fund, will address, that funding, when it's time to replace that asset.
Follow-up question?
Yeah, that's a good answer because I often imagine that we had a legal obligation to decommission playground equipment after a certain age, but I don't guess I'm wrong about that.
Great question. Again, what we can look into those legal obligations as part of the exercise. I do know from the asset management piece, that is listed in the asset management plan with a useful life, based on the age of the equipment that we will have to replace it. But, as far as any obligations, we will definitely review that in discussions with the entire, management team.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, then we have a recommendation that council approve the asset retirement obligation policy and the asset retirement obligation policy be added to the corporate policy manual. A mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Kingma. Seconded by Councillor McKinnon. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, and then the last item up for Johnny is the 2024 draft budget. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Clerk.
My apologies, I jumped ahead here. So 11E, 2024, the draft PSAB budget impacts. I was trying to get you out early. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Mayor Clerk, through the council. So, this is a new report, coming to council now, just as we clean up the budget process, kind of build that well-oiled machine. So this is more of a compliance report, under Ontario Regulation 28409, where municipalities, should be preparing a detailed report outlining the non-cash expenses, prior to adopting a municipal, budget. So as shown in the report there, this highlights the estimated surplus after adjusting for non-cash expenses. So non-cash expenses include amortization, post-employment benefit expenses, and solid waste landfill closure and post-closure expenses. It also adjusts for non-PSAB items. These are principal debenture payments, transfers to and from discretionary reserves, and tangible capital asset acquisitions. So based on our budget that we pass here, we expense all of the capital. So this 2024 budget has about $4 million. So under PSAB, you don't realize that expense in the first year, you amortize that over a number of years. So this is just kind of reconciling those differences. So based on this PSAB reconciliation, we are estimating a 2024 PSAB surplus of about $1.3 million. So again, the township operates on a cash-based budget. So there is no financial implications to this report. This is just describing the conversion of a cash-based budget to a PSAB compliant format. So the recommendation is to approve the report as presented, but happy to answer any questions.
And if you understand that 150%, Johnny probably appreciate the help when he has to do it next time. Any questions on that? That's why we have paid professionals working here. Okay, seeing none, we have a recommendation that the proposed draft 2024 PSAB budget impacts be approved. Moved by Councillor Brody. Seconded by Councillor Kingma. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Now, this is the last one for you. It's the 2024 draft budget, and I'll turn it over to Johnny again.
Right, thank you, Mayor Clerk, for the council. So, so staff presented the 2024 draft operating and capital budget on Monday, December 4th to council. Staff did receive direction to bring forward budget bylaws for consideration of approval this evening. So overall, the 2024 budget results in about 3.72 tax rate increase. As of the draft budget presentation, staff have not received any public response or feedback. So the recommendation is to approve the report and those associated bylaws. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions? I know during the budget process, there were several meetings and the counselors each came in that weren't on the budget committee, have one-on-ones with the treasurer. So I know we've gone through it a fair bit, but are there any lingering questions or comments that anyone has? Counselor Kingma?
Thank you, through the mayor to staff, council, and the public. I just want to thank the staff and council for their efforts in crafting this budget, even though we are facing a tax rate increase during a time of high living costs. We are facing, this budget still reflects the necessary balance needed to maintain the essentials while still enabling future improvements in 2024 and beyond. Going forward, I think we need to decipher the will of our all-powerful benefactors at the provincial and federal level to see what it takes to get a respectable OCIF and CCBF transfer. Also, I'd like to get a stronger idea of what assets we own which are surplus to our operations and arrange for their timely disposition. Again, thank you to our hardworking staff for their sage advice, and I look forward to the challenges of the future.
I think that's been well said. Anyone else have any comments? Counselor Nordoff?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that are nagging me a little bit. 3.7, if that's what it is, that's okay, but actually that's not what it is by the time we get the numbers from the county, right? It'll look more like 5%, if not more, is what the taxpayers will actually be paying. So I think we have to be mindful of that. And I think there's a couple of ways we can do it. One is one that's bugging me since we start talking about the budget is the compensation review. I mentioned it before and I'm going to mention it again. I think that's something, yes, it should be done, but I also think that's something that can be done in-house. We don't have to hire a consultant for that. And I just forget what the number was in the budget for that, but there is a number for that. And the other thing is, in this current year, we've received a lot of money from interest in savings. And I think we should spend some of that money. So put a certain amount of that money towards, say, the Mulla Ferry Drive. I'll end it at that.
Okay, any other comments? And are you proposing that those are amendments you want to make to the budget? And you'd like prepared to do that with a motion?
Yes, and Johnny likely needs some time to cipher that out, what those savings would be, what the tax increase would actually look like then.
So do I have a seconder to keep that motion on the floor? Counselor Kingma, okay, it's open for discussion now. So why don't you clarify what it is exactly you're asking for? You're wanting all of the interest that was earned last year on term deposits to be allocated to the Mulla Ferry Drive project?
not necessarily all of it,
Okay.
because there was quite a sum, I believe. What was this sum? Or,
But those funds were a collection of several reserve that they're allocated for a certain purpose. I don't know if Johnny wants to speak to that.
Yeah, for sure. The interest that we are earning on our asset management or tax rate stabilization is helping grow that fund in order to be able to pay for the infrastructure. And the 2024 budget is actually spending $1.5 million more than we're contributing. So we are drawing that reserve down. But as far as the investments are concerned, the investments that we've actually locked those 2024 sums in for 18 months and a 2-year GIC. There is funds coming up December 29th, but that interest earnings was recognized as part of the 2023 budget. So we wouldn't necessarily realize any interest earnings until 2025 mid-year and at the end of the year, based on those locked-in investments.
So just maybe Cole's notes version here, the interest that was earned, you've already allocated that to the budget for this year. And that was part of where we landed on the 3.72. So that's already in there, correct? Okay. All right. Oh, yes, the compensation review, I believe it was $16,000 over 5 years, like, because we normally do it well, it wasn't done before, but it's been done once, so every 5 years. So Morgan, do you maybe want to speak to that if you don't mind?
Sure, through Mayor Clerk to Council. So the compensation amount for the consultant to complete the work was $16,000. What we've been doing over the last couple months during our performance evaluations, trying to whittle that money down by doing some of the work in-house. Some of the work in-house is making sure that our job descriptions are relevant and accurate and up to date. Where we would need the consultant to do the work would be to look at or essentially strip the bias of essentially me telling council what I would want to pay you. The consultant would look at the market, generally speaking, and find a compensation program that would fit the context of Adelaide Metcalfe. To a comment Councillor McKinnon made during the budget meeting, there is a pay equity component to that I would absolutely have to farm out, regardless of me doing the majority of the work anyway, because that's just some math I just simply don't understand. So there are portions that the consultant would do that would strip some of that bias from essentially me pitching a compensation program to council. There is a parked amount for compensation implementation that Johnny's reserving that we anticipate essentially compensation might adjust. So if that compensation adjusts because we can anticipate that budget impact or potential budget impact based on a future council decision, we might have to pull from that reserve account. So I think
Okay, does that clarify, or is there any follow-up questions on that? Councillor Brody?
I guess I'm a little torn on this one. I agree with Aaron in the part of, how much money do we keep spending on consultants, but I also remember back a year or two after I just started on council and things were pretty backwards, and I'd hate to go backwards again of trying to do stuff that we're not all experts on. I know it sounds like some money, but honestly, sometimes getting the proper advice saves you or does better for you. So I guess I'd like to see, to do as much as we possibly can. And then I think there's legal options, like you just said, that we have to farm out anyways, right?
Yes, and I mentioned before that I'd reached out to AMO because I was saying we can't be unique in this. There's 444 municipalities, and there's similar to us in other parts of Ontario that they would, to me, be a logical choice to collect that data. and provide that service to us as part of our membership. So I'll continue to follow up on that. Morgan?
Yeah, you actually sparked my memory. So I reached out to Omra based on Councillor Kingma's feedback, and unfortunately, they don't actually collect that data. Folks that are collecting that data that say they have Omra numbers are essentially watching specific job advertisements that are coming out across a period of time and writing notes. So I talked to the county's HR manager about that as well. And that's what she had told me, that they don't actually collect that information. So I essentially asked her if I could get a contact for Omra, because I would like to talk to them about, this opportunity, because there really is, in my opinion, an opportunity for Omra to get involved in this one, building off of Mayor Clark's energy is that, they have direct access to folks that are looking at compensation programs for their own organization. So why don't we leverage the membership of Omra to be able to create this data set? So excuse me, it is something that I will continue to chase down on behalf of council.
Councillor Brody?
Through Sue to Johnny. So back to Aaron's other question about not wanting to quite invest that money to spend it on the Mullaferry Drive project. So just refresh my memory, how are we paying for that project? Like over how many years, and when's that stuff due? And just give us just one more hint on what you've locked the money in towards those projects, and I guess more of a time frame.
For sure. So from the Mullaferry Drive project first, there is about $396,000 funding that from development charges. And then we're drawing $1,254,000 from our reserve to fully pay for that project this year. And then next year, there is also a remaining amount of, I believe it's 1.25 million, which will also come from the reserve, life cycle management reserve. From a investment perspective, is that what you want clarity on? So we have a $4 million GIC coming due at the end of December, and that interest earnings, or those interest earnings, was incorporated into the 2023 budget, which is how we arrived at the rate we brought forward last year. So for the 2024 budget, we looked at the high interest rates. So we did take advantage of those rates at the beginning of the month. We just locked in recently, extremely high. They've dropped considerably right now. So by taking advantage of those rates, we were able to lock in one GIC for 2 years, another at 18 months. And then we locked in our landfill $400,000 over 5 years. So for that comparison, by being aggressive with those GIC rates, if we waited until today to do those same investments, we would have lost $90,000. So by taking action there, we've really picked up almost 2% equivalent as a tax rate by being aggressive with those investments.
But just to clarify, that's interest to come, it hasn't arrived yet, so we
Yes.
can't put that there.
Yeah.
So what was the original number we started at in the budget working group that we whittled down to 3.72? Were we at 11 or 12 or something?
Rates.
Yeah, so those interest monies were incorporated into that to get the number down. So to suggest we're not spending it, we actually are. It is in the budget. So, yeah. Just wanted to clarify that. Okay, is there anything else? Councillor Kingma?
Just a brief question through the mayor to, I think Morgan can answer this. Can we go through a procurement process for the consultant?
Absolutely.
I would expect we would, and I would expect with a bit of effort from in-house that it should come in under that. And if we're able to get some assistance from AMO or the organization you mentioned, that would be helpful as well. So, because I just think there's too many people in the same game that there's got to be an easier way to do this and be more efficient and cost effective than each individual municipality doing this on their own. It makes absolutely no sense. Because you need to be a comparative in the marketplace, because that's the whole purpose of doing this, or part of the purpose. So. Okay, so are we in a position where we can, we have a recommendation that the budget and tax rate bylaws be approved? Sorry, we have a motion on the floor to use the interest from last year, Dunmullen Ferry Road project, and to revisit the 16,000 on the consultant. And was there anything else? So that motion is on the floor. But that would mean that we would have to send the budget back to Johnny to be reworked to come up with the new tax rate. So I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, so that's defeated. All right, we have a recommendation that the budget and tax rate bylaws be approved as presented. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor McKinnon, seconded by Councillor Brody. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, and that's carried. Thank you. Okay, is there any other business? Councillor Kingma?
Coulter's too quiet.
Well, he's probably looking at the road conditions on his phone and the guys are probably checking in. I thought you were gonna ask about the skating ranking at the Kerwood Park, so go ahead.
No, that wasn't top of mind, actually. Sorry. Through the mayor. Are we chipping trees?
That's a great question. Actually, Councillor Kingley, you'll see a notice most likely Wednesday this week that we are chipping Christmas trees this year through the Blue Water program for they'll come do it for free. So we will be doing that again this year.
And just as a reminder to anybody watching, whereabouts do they drop their trees off for chipping?
We will make a post on Facebook, but it's at the Public Works Yard here at 2330 Egremont Drive. So there'll be a little compound with a sign. You won't be able to miss it. So yeah, look for social media posts for that.
And how long does that program run?
The compound will be open Friday, and then I think it closes January 7th, somewhere around there. I will confirm on a social media post, but you do have a little bit of time after Christmas.
Great, thanks for clarifying. Okay, any other business? Okay, we have a recommendation that bylaw 69 of 2023, the BD drain 2023, and bylaw 70 of 2023, the zoning bylaw amendment for Van Gorp, receive first and second readings. And that bylaw 71 of 2023, the zoning bylaw amendment for Hyde Park Farm Supply and William Frank, bylaw 72 of 2023, the 2024 budget, and bylaw 73 of 2024, the 2024 tax rate, and bylaw 74 of 2023, confirming December the 18th, 2023, receive first, second, and third and final readings. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor McKinnon, seconded by Councillor Kingma. All those in favor, and that's carried. Thank you. Okay, could I have a motion to adjourn this meeting at 8:39 PM? Moved by Councillor Brody, seconded by Councillor McKinnon. All those in favor, and that's carried.